All right, good morning, good afternoon, actually. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us for Experts Exclusive Ready, Set, Build. We are going to take you through a journey today of having your dream team and building out your project, starting with our CPA, banker, broker, architect, and construction company. All right, so I'll just give us just a minute to get our PowerPoint up. And we'll leave a couple more minutes to get the audience on. All right, I think we are ready to go. If we go to the next slide, I want to introduce our speakers today. We're going to have Mark Sheets from Weaver. He's going to be our CPA and tell us the reasons of why we should own our own building versus and the benefits, the tax benefits to that. Amy Bailey at CrossFirst Bank, she's going to be talking to us about the process of obtaining a loan. Vicki Knotts is going to update us and let us know owning versus leasing and the benefits of using a broker to help you find the building of your dreams or land to build your building. Everett Steele is our architect and designer, and he's going to talk about bringing that project from your head and designing it onto paper. And then myself, Dima Ramadan with DBG Construction, we're going to talk to you about bringing your project to life. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mark Sheets.
Okay, thank you, Dima. As she said, I'm Mark Sheets. I'm with Weaver. I'm a tax partner here. I have been with Weaver for all of almost a month and a half, since August 1. I was with the firm here in Oklahoma City. I started my career in Oklahoma City in the 1980s with Ernst & Young, was there 9 years, then left with a couple of senior managers, formed our own firm, worked that for many years, and then in looking for more support, a national presence, backup with tax laws, benefits, everything, we started looking into merging with a national firm that would be more complementary to helping our clients. And so I made a decision to join Weaver. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Weaver. And if we'll go on the next slide, I'll talk about kind of what we're going to talk about Weaver, talk about some of our service offerings, and then I want to get into tax implications. So I'm going to kind of go through these first ones real quickly so we can kind of move on to tax implications. So on the next slide, briefly about Weaver. We are a national firm. We are not in every state. We right now, it's mainly a national firm out of Texas. They're branching into Oklahoma, starting with our office. They like the tax department I had built here in Oklahoma City. We have offices in California, New York, and goals of reaching into Tulsa, eventually Georgia, Florida. They've got a really good growth model that I like. It's a firm of integrity, good people. On the next slide, it'll tell you a little bit about services that we have. Like I said, a full service accounting firm with your basic assurance area, tax, and financial advisory. Each one of those kind of branches into, they now got risk advisory services, IT services. Being new with Weaver, I'm still learning all of what we have. We have a valuation person in Houston that is chomping at the bit to move here. I already have her lined up, and she's got 2 valuation engagements, one on the death of a client and another one helping in bank valuation. So we're really focused on Oklahoma City. I like their input here. I like their dedication to Oklahoma, and being an Oklahoma native, I office literally 2 miles from where I went to elementary school. I like that. Next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the kind of the accounting methods that are involved. Obviously, cash versus accrual. One thing I will say here is there's always been limitations in the past as to who could use cash method. If you were a certain size accrual, with not only the laws that were passed in 2017, but also what we've seen with the CARES Act with COVID this year, the use of the cash method of accounting has really expanded. I've got a lot of companies that we this year have changed accounting methods. We've been on accrual. We've had to capitalize items, you know, whether it was unicap in inventory, whether it was construction costs, different things that have had to been capitalized have been relaxed with the tax laws of the last 2 years and really opened up cash basis method of accounting for more people. Sometimes accrual does make more sense. Accrual can look better when you're going to the bank. Whereas cash is more of a, how much can I hang on to and not pay taxes sooner than I have to. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about construction accounting. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this as I have in a previous discussion, only because I think focus now is on whether you're trying to decide for yourself. You're not so much a construction company as you are a company trying to decide, do I want to own my own building? Do I want to lease, or what do I want to do? But within the construction accounting world, there is, if you can't use cash method, you're going to have to pick either percentage of completion method or completed contract method. Many times you're going to want to know your situation, what type of building are you constructing, which will look better from a financial statement, actually, which is going to look better in presenting what your actual financial statement position looks like, because it's going to be more driven by what looks better financially, what gives you a more accurate, not better, but what gives you a more accurate picture of your net income versus just all saving taxes. I am a tax guy, but I always tell people, don't let the tax tail wag the dog, or you can get yourself in trouble on that, and we don't want to do that. On the next slide, talk a little bit about just cash flow issues. On a cash method, obviously you're going to pay tax when you collect the cash, and you're going to get expenses when you pay it out. That's an overly broad general rule. When you get into your accrual methods, whether you pick percentage of completion or completed contract method, once again, depending on what it is you're building, what the situation is, one can have a more adverse effect over the other, and it depends. There is so much, it depends on what you're doing, what your contract is, what type of building, the long-term contract of it. The bigger issue in owning versus leasing, and what I want to talk about, is if you are going to build a building, has to do with the advantages of owning a building. You know, obviously you have control. You can do what you want. You get to decide what you are going to do with the building. You get to make design changes. The depreciation, the depreciation, accelerated depreciation models we have now are so much more friendlier, shall I say, tax friendly for people than they were even just 5 or 10 years ago. With bonus depreciation that is available, with Section 179 expenses available, accelerated depreciation methods. And what this comes down to is, if you're going to build a building, I will tell people you have to get a cost segregation study done. That needs to be a part of what you're doing. And what this cost segregation study does, if you're not familiar with it, and generally, it takes the cost of your building project and drops them into buckets of what is the long-term life, what is shorter-term lives. And by a cost segregation study, the IRS will allow you to use this, and you can put cost of your building. It doesn't just all go into the building. Whereas if you don't have this, they're going to say, for example, you build a commercial building, it's depreciable over 39 years straight line. If you can do a cost segregation study, you start taking portions of that cost and you can drop them into 15-year categories, 10-year categories, 7-year categories, 3-year categories. Those categories become eligible for immediate write-offs under bonus depreciation methods, depending on the size of your company, cash basis again. So it's very important to think of that on the front end, and to think about what kind of tax benefits and immediate write-offs you can get on the front end, especially if you're trying to shelter income from the other services of your business. With that said, that's going to wrap up my talk. The next slide is my contact information. Once again, Weaver, if you just Google Weaver CPAs, you're going to find us. Zishan Khan is audit partner here in the office. We do have an office of right now 11 people. We are not big. I left a firm of 35 to join a firm of 850, but we're in an office of 11. So we are new here. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Amy, and she's the Managing Director of the OKC Commercial Banking at CrossFirst Bank. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Dima, and organizing this luncheon. And I am going to go over the banking side of it. So I think if anyone were to take anything away today, and I'm sorry, I had a coughing attack, of course, right before I was coming on. But today I would take away, you know, the partnership that you create in a bank is probably most important, and it's not at all one-sided. It comes from both sides. So I would say when you interview your bank, take with everything that you need, the needs that you need for your company, and share them with the bank so that you can set up the right relationship going forward. So that considers all your treasury products and deposit account options. What does their online banking platform look like? Do they have corporate credit cards? Whatever you might need to just set your company up for growth, you want to make sure that you're with the right bank. And then assess the expertise in the lending team and understand what they do and don't know about your business and industry in order to serve you appropriately. So I, as Mark mentioned, I am with CrossFirst Bank. I have been here for 5 years this month. I've come from another bank for 18 years, so 23 years in the industry, and I have served mostly the commercial side. And although I manage the commercial banking group, I would say that I love to specialize in commercial real estate. So this is where my passion plays in the banking industry. So next slide on application expectations. So just want to go over, you know, the next few slides is the process, and the process is so important that the client understands the timing expectations. But as you sit down and you've decided on a bank, it's never too early when you are visiting just the idea of the project to start with your banker first. It's never too early, in my opinion, to discuss the project early so that you can start set timing expectations for yourself and the bank. The bank is always going to ask you for kind of the staple package will look like financial statements from any of the guarantors, personal financial statements from all of the guarantors, 3 years personal tax returns with K1s and contingent debt schedules. They're going to ask for details around the project, the pro forma, the comp set that may have concluded, the information within your pro forma. That's really important that we understand that you understand the markets and your competitive set that you applied all your formulas in your pro forma, what the lease structure might be if it's applicable. And then obviously if it's not a new business, they'll ask for your historical tax returns at least 3 years, and then anything year to date on the existing business. Again, if it's a new business plan, we're going to ask for a detailed business plan and who you think your target market might be, any contracts or other due diligence items that are part of the process. And most importantly, when you're doing construction, the bank's going to want to get close to who you are hiring for your GC. And so their resume and their proof of a proven experience in the industry is critical to kind of communicate that to the bank so that if they've not had a relationship with that contractor before, they can understand the quality of their work. So that's incredibly important in the application process. So on the next slide, these are reports that are just really important that you know about, that are part of the due diligence items, whether it be ordered on your side or the bank side. It can be done both ways except for a few of these. But phase one, I will say most times, if not all, on a commercial construction especially, you're going to be required to do a phase one from the bank side of it. It's also for your protection. The phase one is an environmental report, and it just makes sure that you understand if there's any environmental risks that could be passed to you as the buyer or the owner of the property before you construct. Those reports can take a little bit of time. The bank, CrossFirst Bank, is fine with those reports being ordered through the borrower, but that's an important question to ask: who is responsible for ordering some of these reports? Because sometimes some banks may have different philosophies on that. The ALTA survey will always be required. It's important to identify any kind of potential encroachments or issues with that might pop up on the title commitment. And then you have your title policy. And I would just want to stress here for anyone and everyone that's done and been in construction, it's very important not to start work, any kind of moving dirt on a construction project prior to closing on the loan with the bank. That's very critical. And that could jeopardize your title policy and thus also jeopardize your ability to close the loan on the property. So that's happened before. There's sometimes a workaround. Sometimes you need to start work, but you can go through some clearance and approvals to do that between the bank and the title company. So be sure to communicate that if there's a need to start work early before closing with the banker. And then we will ask for zoning verification, making sure the appropriate zoning is in place prior to construction. The bank will always order the appraisal, and the appraisal will take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks right now on a commercial property. And then depending on the type of project, we may ask for a property condition report. So if it's older, we may ask that somebody qualified come in, third party, and do a PCR on the property just to make sure that we haven't left out any unidentified deferred maintenance items that need to be included in the underwriting of the loan. And then bonding verification, likely required on any kind of large construction project. Also, plan and cost review would be important. And so now we wait. So you're approved and we get to close and it feels like everything's moving, but then you don't hear anything for a while. The reason is these reports that we just talked about take a lot of time, anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks, just depending on those. So I just listed out kind of what we're seeing right now in the market on each one of the reports. And again, it just depends on the complexity of the project to really determine the number of weeks it's going to take. If it's a super large, complex project, a phase 1 could take 4 to 6 weeks. It just depends. Most times if it's a larger project, you might have attorney prepared loan documents. So you're going to have to wait for those draft sets to come to you. And then general liability and builder's risk will be requested during this time as well. And I would say right now, just depending again on the complexity, you should expect 30 to 60 days from when we receive everything we need to fully underwrite the file to be able to close on the loan. And again, if a phase 1 or some other report comes back out to survey and they identify something that needs to be remediated prior to closing, that could obviously add more weeks to that distance between contract and closing. So when you do close, I think another aspect that should be discussed with the banker upfront is what is your process when you're going to ask for a draw? What does that look like? It does look differently from bank to bank. So, you want to make sure that you can comply with what they're going to request from you. And a lot of times this is going to be in your loan agreement. So you need to make sure to read your loan agreement and understand what they are requiring from you in order to fund any kind of draw request they might ask from you. So it just depends on the scale of the project, but sometimes they can be funded same day. Sometimes the loan agreement will give the bank 10 days. Again, how large and how complex it is and how long it takes an inspector to get out. But most times on a project, you're going to be required to have an AIA form signed by your GC and engineer, any backup supporting documentation, lien waivers, invoices, making sure builder's risk is in place. So again, communication's everything on the post-closing process, that you understand that part. That was really fast and a lot of information, but hopefully you took away some information today. I left my contact information on the slide. I'm sure Dima's going to send it out after this panel. And I have the pleasure of introducing Vicki Knotts, and she is with Newmark. And so Vicki, I'll turn it over to you.
I'm sorry, I think I muted myself. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Vicki Knotts. I'm with Newmark Grubb, Levy Strange Beffert. We're an affiliate office of Newmark Grubb, which is a global company. We're located downtown, and my specialty is in office, but we can take care of any of your needs, be it industrial, multifamily, retail, office, and now most recently hospitality. And the reason for our our meeting here is to kind of discuss whether a person wants to build a building, own it, or to lease the property. And if you would go to the next slide, we can look at some different options that you need to really think about before you just jump into it. On one side of owning a property, which, you know, I would rather be a property owner myself, you need to think that you're going to be gaining equity and building appreciation. And you also have a potential for rental income. If you purchase a building or build a building that's larger than your immediate needs, I think the banks like to look at as owner occupied as 51% at least on the property. You can have the potential of rental income during your occupancy and stage the lease to expire, if you're really good, to expire at about the same time that you're planning your growth, and so that you can kind of build in your growth in your freestanding building. You also have extra tax breaks, and you have control of the property, so that if you want to downsize, expand, you can have that built in, so no one's telling you you can or cannot, or you're tied to a lease that is longer term than what your needs are. But on the other side, you have cash. You're going to have to outlay quite a bit of cash as far as your down payment, closing costs, and you also have to have a reserve for any kind of repairs that needs to take place if your air conditioner goes out or you have a flood. So, you know, you're on the hook for those items that you wouldn't be in a lease necessarily. You also have fixed expenses on your lease where obviously you do not have control of, I mean, whatever happens, happens if you have an ownership, but you do have that flexibility to expand or contract. On the lease side, you don't have the outlay of cash. You usually have just a security deposit and your monthly rent. So you know what those expenses are going to be. If your business changes and maybe you have a special client that's on the south side of Oklahoma City and you want to move closer to them, it's easy when your lease expires to pick up and move, versus if you've already put your money into an existing building, it's not as easy to move. But then on the other side of that, you are not, every time that you make a lease payment, you're not creating any kind of equity. You have no appreciation of the building. You have nothing to do with the building itself. And your rent costs are usually higher than what your normal, your payments to the bank. So this is something that you kind of need to think about. You can't have it both ways. You kind of make a decision on which side of the fence you need to be on. Please look at the next slide, please. If you look at actually the financial side of the project, if you compare two different buildings, you look at the same rate on, like say, $18.50 a foot is what I have proposed. You have a 3,200 square foot building. If you purchase a building, let's look at paying yourself $18.50 a foot. You have expenses that are about $5 a foot, so you have a $43,000 NOI. If you buy the building on an 8.5 cap, the price of your building would be about $508,000. Looking at that, your debt service would be about $33,000. Drill it down, divide it by the square footage, and it runs you $10.59 a foot. You have expenses on top of that, which average about $5 a foot. So all in, you're in for $15.59 a foot. If you go on the lease side of it, you're in straight $18.50. You don't have any tax, any advantages here. It's just $18.50, which is a difference of about $3 a foot. So you're actually spending $3 a foot more than if you were owning the property, and you're not creating any kind of equity in the property. And then, of course, at the end of the life of your ownership, you can sell that and also have a return on your investment as it appreciates. So it looks on the owner side, it's much better to actually own than it is to lease. Next slide. But one thing that you really need to consider whenever you decide that you want to purchase a building or even lease a building, as far as that goes, you need to surround yourself with professionals. You're not in the real estate business, most likely, so you have your own IT company, and it's not your business to know what the surrounding market is. That's what your professionals do. You need to determine whether your broker is working on the landlords or the builder side versus working for you. You also need to have an architect that understands what your plans are so that you can design the building specifically for you. It's good to have your attorneys, your lenders, a good relationship with your lenders, as Amy has mentioned. Your CPA is a vital part because of all the different tax benefits that you can have. And your developer, you need to check on their reputation, see some of their properties that they have done. And remember, even though you are working with the developer and they have certain specifications that goes on with the development, it's up to you to make your own decisions. You are in control of your layout. You need to make sure that other people understand what your needs are, and don't settle for anything other than what your needs are. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate having the opportunity here. And I have I'm going to introduce our next speaker, which will be Everett Steele. He is the principal with KKT Architects.
Thank you, Vicki. Yes, my name is Everett Steele. I'm principal interior design with KKT Architects. We have an office in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. We are basically approximately a 70-member firm. If you go to the next slide, we have in our office, we have the following disciplines: architecture, interior design, structural engineering, construction administration, and administrative offices. And what we basically try to do is take the project from ground up to the finish, not just build the outside, but also the interior side of the project. And we work both on ground up buildings, and if you buy a building, then it will be mostly, and sometimes, a lot of times, if you buy the building, it'll be an interior remodel. And we'll go through the process of how this goes up with the next slide. This just shows our character and how we are involved in the community and different things that we do. Our process coming up. What we really like to do is, in this first part of the phase, is a research. And if we're building a new building, we'll go through a 3D massing, and then we'll go through a design process. Our research is when we get together with you, the client, as shown in the next slide, and have what is called a visioning meeting, where we put all things that you brought in, that we brought in, and discuss your vision of what you want to see for your new building, whether it's a ground up or whether it's an interior remodel. We discuss that with you so that we can determine where you sit with this project. Next slide. And we go, this is when, after we figure that out, we go into the programming phase. In the programming phase, we go into what is called block drawings. This is the phase where we lay out your departments, lay out staff, lobbies, elevators, all this stuff we lay out depending on how we see your vision coming together, and working closely with you, the client, to figure this all out. Next slide, please. And this is what Vicki was talking about. If you have a building where you're not quite taking the full building, you can leave the rest of it for someone else to take over, but it leaves you the first right of refusal to take the rest of the space when somebody's lease is totally up. Next slide, please. Next one, we're going to schematic designs. And this is also another one where we're getting closer to where we want to do pricing drawings so that you can get a price on what the project, how the project is coming along. And we usually have a project manager on the ground up buildings involved so that as we going along, we try to staying within your budget as depicted on the next slide. Here's one simple interior remodel where we've done that same thing as a pricing drawing. We show an electrical and space planning so that we can get your space priced out. Let's go to design development side of it. Next slide. Next slide. One more. This is where we go into our 3D rendering and showing you how your space can end up looking and feeling for you. And next slide, we show different aspects. We also come in and show you the develop your finishes and and this is where we talk with you to get in agreement. I was like, are we going in the right direction or do we need to change? Next slide. This is the last process where we go into a construction document phase, developing your plans with the MEP, which is the mechanical engineering and plumbing consultants and structural consultants and civil engineering. We're getting all this together so that we can file for the building permit. Next slide. And next one. Construction phase, we get into the construction documents where they particularly tell you the details. Go to next two slides. One more. Here we have a few finished products. St. Francis Cancer Center was ground up. And then the interior is how we develop the interiors. Next slide. Vast building, which is a new ground up building, is Vast Bank is on one floor and they have leased out the rest of the space to other tenants. Next slide. If you look at the upper right-hand corner, Discovery Lab that's a rendering of a new building going up over at the Gathering Place in Tulsa. Next slide. Thank you for your attention, and I have the honor to introduce our next speaker, Dima with DBG Construction.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Everett. That was very informational. My name is Dima Ramadan, CEO with DBG Construction. And next, I will just talk to you a little bit about our higher purpose at DBG, which is to contribute to the world and provide an experience that inspires and delights our community. Our job here is to bring teams together to build a better project faster, build a better project and faster than any other general contractor. Today, I'm going to go over the different construction methods: design, bid, build, construction management, negotiated bid, design, build, and development. Next. So first, I wanted to go over design, bid, build is also known as hard bid. And this is when a client hires the architect and then does the drawings 100% with that architect, and then the architect will help them in a bid process where they'll select a group of general contractors, typically 3 to 4, and put it out to competitive bid. The pros on this is it encourages the lowest possible price, and you get a full set of construction documents and specs. Some of the cons is that it will limit the general contractor's ability to navigate design. There is an incentive here that results in scope gap to bid if there's not much clarity, to bid a lower grade material depending on how the specs have been lined out, or exclusions. And the linear sequencing of the events will make the project go a little bit longer timeline, And then there's not as much flexibility as you'll see with design build or construction management. Next, I'll show you a project, Chase Bank, that we did. This was a ground up project in downtown, and this was a bid project. Next, I'll talk to you about construction management. So construction management, again, the owner hires the architect and design team separately, and the difference that is from design bid build or the hard bid project, the general contractor comes in early on, or the construction manager. And so they are working alongside the architect during the pre-construction phases, as Everett had pointed out. So the benefit for less experienced owners without in-house construction capability, it saves money for projects that are technical complexity or multi-phase projects. We establish a grand maximum price at the beginning of the project, so it provides a ceiling, and the GC and the architect work together to keep all the materials and finishes and the building type into that budget. And then there are scheduling problems in regards to a building that is being renovated and you want to stay open, it's really easy to phase a construction management type project. Some of the cons is, depending on how it's structured, you might have little cost over contingencies. Architect may not take input from the CM during the design. I find that being rare. And then the owner is responsible for any changes that are missed. The project that was construction management for us was IBC Bank. They build several banks, and so they're prototypes. They're just building them one after another, and the construction management works for them very well. This project, we did it in 4 months. It was a major renovation of a mid-rise building in Dallas. Next, I'll talk to you about negotiated bid. So negotiated bid, again, the architect is hired by the owner independently of the general contractor, and they provide a price, and then and the architect and GC work to stay in that negotiated price. This is really used for set building standards in the restaurant industry. Most often, the client or architect is to have a preference over the contractor, so you get to kind of choose who you want to work with versus doing a bid situation. The construction costs are more transparent, and it gives the general contractor liberty to suggest some add-ons. The cons is the building is predicated on the contractor's qualifications. The design may be less creative if you're trying to stay into a tight budget. And then again, just the wanting to ensure that you're using a contractor that's done this type of job before. So for us, that project was Zaxby's, and this was a new prototype for them. They went to a smaller concept, and it was a ground up. We did this in about 4 months. So last, I'll go over design build. This, you'll see the general contractor hires the architect. It's a collaborative method, delivery method. Some of the pros is there's flexibility with a tight budget. You're able to overlap design and construction to shorten some timelines. The constant pre-construction gives the owner complete design control. Capitalize on innovation and expertise of the suppliers and specialty subcontractors. So in the pre-construction phase, we'll actually bring in our subcontractors and suppliers to work with the architect and engineers to get the project under budget. Cons is that we do push for early decisions from the client. The design team working with the contractor upsets the typical system that you've seen in the other three. And not all architects like this. You'll get some architects that don't want to do design build. You have others that absolutely enjoy it and have done that often. And just having the upfront program and performance criteria ensures not having one would cause some conflict down the way. So design build is a major renovation that we did back in 2013. And this was an old warehouse that we converted into a law firm. We cut in over almost 3 dozen windows and put in some skylights. And it was a very successful project for the client and us. Next. So this is just some information on the construction methods from 2013 to 2017 into today, you're seeing that there is an increase in design build and CM, and that the design bid build, which is your hard bid projects, are declining. Next. Pre-construction, just some data to show you how it works and how the pre-construction approach is layered on. So you can see how the GC budget starting in the beginning, and then laying on the trades, and then going into hard bid, and then moving into construction. So it just keeping everybody involved from the beginning ensures a project that goes smoothly, everyone's on the same page, and stays into a established budget. Next. So in conclusion, want to thank you for your time and let you know that no matter what project delivery method you choose on your next project, remember the strengths and weaknesses of the individuals working on your project will have more of an impact on it in the manner in which you organize your contracts. So both are very important. We appreciate all of the speakers. You guys have done a great job, and we hope this provides you with your dream team for your next construction project. If everyone is moving forward together, then success takes itself. So Henry Ford said it best. And we will end there. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dima.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Great job.